Welcome to the Legends Behind the Craft podcast, where we feature top leaders in the wine and craft beverage industry with your host, Drew Hendricks. Now, let's get started with the show.
Drew Thomas Hendricks here. I'm the host of the Legends Behind the Craft podcast, where I talk with leaders in the wine and craft beverage industry. Today, I have a very special guest on the show. She runs the family vineyards both in New York and in Mexico. But before I formally introduce her, got to do the sponsored message. Today's episode is sponsored by Barrels Ahead. At Barrels Ahead, we work with you to implement a one-of-a-kind marketing strategy, one that highlights your authenticity, tells your story, and connects you with your ideal customers. In short, we help wineries and craft beverage producers unlock their story to unleash their revenue. Go to barrelsahead.com today to learn more. So today I'm super excited to talk with Maria Rivero González. Maria is the CEO of RGNY Winery in the North Fork of the Long Island. Welcome to the show, Maria.
Thank you, Drew. I'm happy to be here and talk to you.
Oh, I'm stoked to have you on. So Maria, tell me about I always like to start. How did you get started in the wine industry?
Okay, that's the story of RGNY, so that makes sense.
Okay.
So really, my father planted a vine back in 1998. So next year we'll be turning 25. But he planted it more as a hobby. He wanted his Bordeaux blend to drink with his friends. I think in the back of his mind, though, he did think about this potentially as a business. He's just one of those visionary guys that does everything. And I guess at this point, he didn't want to say anything. People were like, you're crazy enough doing a lot of things.
He had to play it down low as a hobby first.
Yeah. So he planted as a hobby, small space, Bordeaux blend, and he started selling it. I mean, he started drinking it. And then I graduated college 2007. And I said, maybe I want to start selling your wine. And he was like, maybe you do something else. And I was like, maybe I do this. That went on for a while.
Was this down in Parras?
Yeah. Parras. So Parras is the oldest wine growing region in the whole continent.
Oh, wow.
A lot of people don't know this, but the Jesuits came in 1497. They found natural vines there. Parra means vine.
Oh.
And they actually called it Santa Maria de las Parras, very religious, big name. But it actually means the land of the vines, right? So the history starts there, and there's still some wineries there that date back for 125 years.
Oh, man.
Yeah. So it was a good place that he chose, I think. My father did. And then after going back and forth, I kind of started selling it in 2007. We came up with the brand. It was called Rivero González. So the R stands for Rivero, my father's last name. González stands for my mother's last name.
Wow. And
then it was born. And from there on, we've done plenty of things.
Yeah. Excited to hear about it. So talk to me. So you started there. Before that, you were doing international relations, and your dad didn't want you to get into the wine industry.
I mean, more than didn't. Yeah, I don't think he thought that was a smart move for me at the beginning. Then I think in Mexico, culturally, I think what was expected for me was to get married and have 5 or 6 kids.
Oh, yeah.
Right? Little did they know that I was going to really love working and love my job. So I think at the beginning, it was more like, do you really want to do this? Or are you going to do it seriously? And but I've always, I had been in love with Parras as a region. Parras is a microclimate in the middle of the desert. So you have that amazing thing where you're driving and you're in the middle of the desert and suddenly everything is green. Like,
whoa. How's that? It's just the way the mountains or the way the storms come in?
The water. So it's a microclimate, but it has small mountains and it's higher. It's 2,500 meters up. Sorry, I do meters and it's confusion, right?
That's hot. I mean, you're like 7,000 feet.
Yeah, it's high. So and the little mountains have water in them. They're like little caves where the water filters, and it makes for these little literally caves of water that you can actually visit and go in. And that's how it becomes, it's an oasis. So you have vines, you have pecans, you have figs, you have pomegranates, you have peaches, everything. So we grew up kind of like grabbing those things, and that was our summers.
Uh-huh. Oh, sounds fantastic. And what drew you to wine other than what was the aspect of wine that really you thought that would be your career?
I think the first thing, to be honest, was being outside, the land itself, like agriculture as a whole. And then I think the second thing was actually that it was such an up and coming industry in Mexico, or even less than that. It was so incipient that you could really do whatever you wanted.
Yeah.
You could build your own rules. I feel like I was attracted to that from the get-go.
Sure. Yeah, because it was just starting. The Mexican wine industry is really just starting to take off in the early 2000s.
Yeah, I mean, try selling a Mexican wine to a Mexican back in 2007. No. They were like, but why? I can buy an Italian wine. I can buy a Spanish wine. And I was like, but you can buy a Mexican wine. It was so hard.
Yeah.
The culture wasn't there, but also we could do anything we wanted. So like one of my first moves was actually hire some designers and come up with a cool label. No one in Mexico was doing cool labels. That was just part of the industry. So
yeah, you're right. Now it's definitely changed. We just got back from the Valle de Guadalupe here I live in Southern California. So that's the closest Mexican wine region to where I live. And it's the artistry and graphic design has really elevated over the last 10
years. Right?
You guys are on the forefront of that.
Oh yeah, I always say this, and maybe one day someone's going to come and tell me that's not true. But we were the first to actually hire a designer agency to go through our branding and do not only the actual bottles, but the whole message that we were trying to convey as a brand, right? Sure. And then you also had the flexibility of this new world region where you can do whatever you want. So we were the first ones to do a Blanc de Noir, and people were like, a Blanc de what? A who de la what?
That's funny.
But it allowed us to expand in a way that I guess that was the only way I knew how to do it, because technically I wasn't as strong back then in terms of wine making. I was learning together with my winemakers. I would hire the best winemaker I could pay for, and then I would sit down with them and learn.
Oh man. And now how did you go about selling this wine? So you wanted to sell it. People in Mexico didn't really want to buy it yet. How did you convince them that it was something worth buying? Or did you export it?
No, I think I partnered up with a distributor who really had my back, and so I convinced them that having a Mexican wine and me being exclusive with them and being the only Mexican exclusive was something worthwhile, that there were Mexican people that were willing to bet on Mexico. Sure. And I guess we kind of did it with marketing and the product itself. The quality of the product was always there. We never, ever, there were even some years when we were like, this wine is not worth being out there. We need to practice more. So we were committed to our quality, and that really helps, because once people buy it, then they want to keep buying it, right? Sure. And the other thing is we came up with, in Mexico, we call the 3 Bs. Bueno, bonito, barato. So bueno is good, bonito is beautiful, barato is cheap or accessible. So we came up with a product that had the 3 Bs. Okay. Mexican wine started off either very expensive or very bad quality, but no in betweens. And our Cielo brand became that in between. Oh. And we literally it worked. We started selling and selling and selling, and it worked. Well, that's fantastic. It's just an unmet segment. And then, so is it currently being exported to the United States? So this is now RGMX. Yeah, so Rivero González became RGMX when we bought the New York property. Kind of wanted to make them brother and sister more strongly. But we've always had the Cielo line as well. So we have Cielo in Mexico and Cielo in New York as well.
Oh.
Cielo is a tribute to our skies.
Mm-hmm.
So it's cielo means heaven or sky in Spanish.
Mm-hmm.
We add an extra S only because the cielos in Parras are so special, right? In the desert, you get these very, very amazing stars, and you get the sunsets that are super red.
Mm-hmm.
And the actual label is a staircase to go up to heaven.
Oh, nice. Nice.
So if you finish the label, you get there.
Oh, great. Now, you mentioned New York, so you've got your RGNY. What? I can't think of two different microclimates between high desert and then you got Long Island.
I mean, and I'll tell you the worst part. I had been in the wine industry for more than 10 years, and I had no idea Long Island had a wine region.
Oh, that's funny.
So we decided we wanted to expand. That was something conscious that we did as a family.
Mm-hmm.
We wanted to expand, and we wanted something outside of Mexico.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, for me to be able to manage both, it had to be something where I didn't have to travel for days, right?
Sure.
So the US became kind of like where we started looking, and an investment banker actually called my father and said, there's this property in New York. I was like, okay, I'm going to the Finger Lakes, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
I land in JFK. I look at the address and I'm like, wait, this is Long Island. This is the Hamptons. Where am I going?
Uh-huh.
I had lived in New York twice, so I knew the region, but I hadn't really been out here.
Mm-hmm.
And I got here and this is beautiful. It couldn't be more beautiful. The grapes are amazing. You have one of the biggest markets 2 hours away.
Mm-hmm.
It just so happens that no one knows the region.
Uh-huh.
And the wines are good, but they could be better, right?
Mm-hmm.
The winemaking was a little lacking in the region when we bought this property.
Uh-huh.
But I guess my main pitch to my family in the end was, hey, even if I suck at this wine business,
Mm-hmm.
just the real estate alone is worth a while.
Yeah.
It's real estate in Long Island. It's going to go up, right? So that was my pitch, and it worked.
That's a good pitch. So now talk to me about what kind of grapes grow well in Long Island?
Cool. It's 100% cool climate.
Mm-hmm.
So Sauvignon Blanc, for me, that's the winner.
Mm-hmm.
Both in expression, yields, and commercially, it's just beautiful.
Mm-hmm.
It expresses very, very well. And it's great for sparklings.
Mm-hmm.
Because you want to harvest early because it's humid, so you can get mildew and all of these sicknesses that I had never experienced in Mexico, which is the other way around. But someone told me this a few days ago, and I thought it was very interesting. With how global warming is changing all of the regions now, I think Long Island is going to have an opportunity to do light reds. Like Cab Franc does amazingly well here.
Oh, really? Yeah, I would think so. And then there's also the northern red varietals that may be even too warm for some of the ones that grow up in the north part of New York.
Yeah. I mean, I like Cab Franc here. I like Pinot as well.
Mm-hmm.
But I think with that comment, that makes sense. Because we do lighter reds, and
Absolutely.
We don't try to do big bold reds, and I'm not into fixing wines. And wines are, in my head, 80% of your wine, it is made on your grape, right?
Yep. Agree 100%. And anytime you try to manipulate it, it just seems to backfire.
Well, yeah, the wine itself doesn't like that, right? We always say that the more successful we were is because we touched it less.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of people think that's easier. That's actually harder. You have to watch closer and make sure to, the one or two things that you actually do, you do them well, right?
Yes. Yeah. And now when did you move into New York, or not move into, when did you purchase the property and start revitalizing that vineyard?
So we bought the property late 2017, and I moved out here February 2018.
Oh.
I get here, it's freezing. We're in the middle of the water, right? So The wind is almost blowing me. It's 4 p.m. and it's pitch black. And I'm like, what am I doing? Take me back to Mexico, please. It was a little shocking at the beginning. But then 2018, we rebranded. We launched the brand in 2019. And we started with serious winemaking.
Oh, that's fantastic. Now it's like you created your own category in down in Mexico, and you're able to repeat it here. What were the challenges of that's different here in New York versus Mexico?
I mean, I guess the one thing that is similar, and you asked about it earlier, is I was certain I wanted an underdog region.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
And that was a little weird, maybe, or my family were like, but why? If Napa's so established and you can sell the wine, I was like, but I want to be the head of the rat, not the tail of the lion.
Yeah.
Right? Like, I want to be able to have an impact and do wines really well, and then I can help the region get somewhere else, right? But having said that,
similarities there for sure, where you get to be the inventor of the region or reinvent or a leader.
And you asked me at the very beginning, like what attracted me to this business, and I said the no restrictions in Mexico. So I guess I was looking to repeat that in my head, and I only now I'm putting it into words. So thank you. But in terms of the winemaking and the grape, especially the grape growing, it's just completely different. Whereas in Mexico, we're like, you have to harvest now. We're at 25 bricks. This is insane. Here we're like, we're 20 bricks. Yay. Celebrating, right? It's like, are we going to get to 21? Is it going to kill us? So like the amount of sunlight for sure is completely opposite. And the amount of water. Or the humidity of the place. So in Long Island, we have to harvest early, otherwise we're not gonna get more sunlight. So the grapes are not gonna get a higher sugar content, and you're only fighting these sicknesses that are coming to you. Yeah,
as the hurricane season ramps up, and then the early winter storms.
Exactly. So white, sparkling rosé, Blanc de Noirs. We're doing some amphora oranges.
Oh, nice.
That we're into the amphoras now, exploring a little bit. Skin contact whites and light reds.
Becoming a really big category. It just seems to. I've had them for years, but lately every restaurant list now I see the red, white, and orange on the menu.
It has. We were actually the first orange wine in Mexico. We did it in 2014. We launched it. We started selling it in 2015. We sold 9 bottles in a year. 9.
Almost a case.
My mom was like, I'll drink it all. Don't give it to anybody else. They don't appreciate it. No, we put it all in the cellar. And 3 years ago, we said, let's do it again, but let's do a campaign. Let's ramp it up. And it was almost 2020. So it wasn't as rare. We sold out like this.
Yeah, you were just a little ahead of your time on releasing it.
And I think bottle time did a great favor to it. So
for sure. So like talking about the different consumers, like in Mexico versus New York, that's something I like to learn more about. How is it different selling wine in Mexico versus selling wine in New York or in the US?
I guess definitely New York specifically, I would think, and California has a more sophisticated consumer. They understand a little more. They drink more. They're a little less afraid to try things. I think the Mexicans are afraid to try new things. So it's like Spanish wine. And then it was Italian wine. And now it's Mexican wine. But they're not very individualistic in their styles. They'll drink whatever everybody else is drinking. They're very much about trends. And trends last a long time. Whereas in New York, trends last
a week.
A weekend and you're done. It's like, oh, you did great. Next. So I think that's different. In New York, you have to be innovating, but also you have to know where you stand and stay there.
Mm-hmm.
So if you try to grab every trend, you're just going to get tired, right?
Mm-hmm.
In Mexico, it was easier to grab trends because things get there a little later. So you just have to look elsewhere and kind of bring them back. I do think, though, I mean, I know the Mexican consumption of wine is growing at a much faster rate than the US.
From what I see in the Valle de Guadalupe, I would agree. It was the couple times I've been down there, it was jam packed, and it wasn't from people from San Diego. It was local tourism.
But like sparkling, you would sell one bottle of sparkling for every 20 of red.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas in New York, you'll sell 5.
Wow.
And rosé, that's like insanely popular in New York, right?
Uh-huh.
In Mexico, it's like rosé, that's for girls.
Give it another year.
Yeah, true. You see something? Have you seen something different in Valle de Guadalupe?
Yeah, no, the rosés are very popular. I think it's warm. It's by the coast. You get a
lot of Americans are coming in too.
You got Americans and a lot of the people from Tijuana, which is where they get most of their local tourists. I think they're a little more used to the California grape culture.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that makes sense.
At least that was my impression when I went down there. But as far as the one thing that struck me is the level of hospitality.
In Mexico?
In Mexico with the wineries and the
oh yeah.
I feel like they're on the forefront of where a lot of the wineries here in the US need to be. Is that the same over in the Parras region?
No, not really. Parras doesn't really have a culture of tasting rooms yet.
Okay.
So maybe
they would come from Chihuahua or Mexico City would be the closest people to visit the region?
No, from Monterrey, Torreón,
okay.
Monterrey is the biggest city around. But there didn't used to be a culture of tasting rooms. Like we started wholesale. That was our thing, right? And then I opened a small store in Mexico City and a small store in Monterrey. Okay. And then I opened tours by reservation only, and it exploded. So now I have a small tasting room in Mexico.
Oh, that's great.
But it's slowly getting there. I think Valle exploded with just a few articles in the US and people coming over, I guess, and it
kind of went hospitality first.
But I have to say, we as Mexicans are hospitality.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I'm sure you've been to other places of Mexico. It's in our DNA. It's in our culture.
Oh yes,
and
great restaurants.
And the business model works because labor is not as expensive.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Try $25 a person here in New York, and me trying to run a tasting room. I mean,
yeah,
it's hard.
It doesn't work. So, but you've got I was going to talk to you about your wine club, the hospitality part at the your New York winery. It looks like a pretty good. I like the way that you constructed it.
So, I mean, we do have a running tasting room. We get like 30,000 people a year. So it is up and running and it's working. The region here in the North Fork, I would say most of the wineries sell 80% of their wines through the tasting room. So
and how many wineries are in that region? North Fork?
Like 70 something.
Okay, so people come up from the city and make a whole day, a weekend of it.
Yeah,
mm-hmm.
It's a whole weekend. You have great food around here: seafood, lobster rolls, oysters, clams. And yeah, the wine club, it took us a while to get to one. We began with 3 wine clubs, and we wanted to be have different options.
Mm-hmm.
And in the end, we said like one that's practical enough for everyone to have something. The one thing that I think we do differently with the wine club is we add something that's either Mexican or local.
Oh.
So all of your shipments are going to have, maybe we're doing like a beer that's done by, it's a woman-only brewery that's around here.
Uh-huh.
Or maybe you're going to have one of our Mexican wines.
Oh, that's great. Well, it allows the people just to broaden their horizons and explore all the different nuances of what your family's doing.
Yeah, and the one thing that we can, and you mentioned service, the one thing that we can do differently, more in a more obvious way and real way, is Mexico.
Mm-hmm.
We can be Mexicans. Nobody else can be Mexican,
Yeah.
right? So I can bring in real Mexican food. I can bring in we sell a lot of stuff for like the house that's Mexican that we bring from Mexico. We're doing a takeover with this beer company, and we're doing micheladas and clamatos, and we're doing a Dia de Muertos event. So it's like, we're the only ones that can do that.
Yeah, you can authentically bring the culture in and present it.
And do hospitality like Mexicans.
Oh, that's fantastic. Yeah, I'm just rambling right here, but the one thing I was bummed is actually driving down to Mexico. It's really hard to bring the wine back. It's just like you're allowed 2 bottles.
Yeah,
It
3 liters,
like,
right?
Yeah, it's like I think the tariff isn't that much, but they really going down there. They really downplay selling the wine. It's more about the whole hospitality experience for the people from the U.S. going down there.
Yeah, whereas if you go in California, it's more about take 5 cases with you. Right?
Yeah, to go, even up in Canada. Like when I tour up in Canada, it's very lax coming down from Canada to the United States. It's not the same way for Canadians going up from the United States, but for the U.S., it's very reasonable. So
I didn't know that. Yeah, and that's that. I mean, Mexican wine is being consumed, is being drunk and finished in Mexico.
Mm-hmm.
So there's very few companies that are exporting right now.
Mm-hmm.
And I think the reason, now that I'm here and I'm exporting, and I used to export hit or miss with a few distributors for 1 year and then nothing. And then it was just the bureaucracy in the US. It's just like, we're not used to that. You know, where we used to say, oh, I'm sorry, I didn't know. Where do I pay? And here the 3-tier system and understanding it and going through it and deciding which state and what strategy. And it's, I think it's hard for a lot of businesses to navigate and want to do it.
Oh, for sure. It's a very convoluted system, man. But you guys are, so I want to, with the pre-show, we talked about innovation and how your family's just been a leader and you've been a leader. Talk to me about some of the innovative things that you guys got going on.
Okay, I told you a little bit about the Blanc de Noir and the orange in Mexico. I think those are great examples of how we kind of did it. And again, these things, it has been so organic to us. It was more like my father was like, we should do a Blanc de Noir because it's very hot here and I want something that's stronger and I like to eat meat. And it kind of...
what was he making? We'll talk about innovation, but what was this hobby wine? What grapes did he plant? Bordeaux varietals.
Bordeaux varietals. So our RG Tinto,
mm-hmm.
That's our iconic wine. It's a Bordeaux blend, 24 months, French oak barrel. But then he was like, but it's too hot to drink it during summer. And I'd like to drink something. And I once saw a wine that was made of red grapes and we're like, okay, let's figure it out. And then so it has kind of been organic either by my father or my idea or the winemaker's idea. Like everyone kind of pitches in, which I think is great if you want to innovate. In Mexico, we're the only ones doing canned wine right now.
Yeah, that category is booming, and it's so Mexico, you're still the only, not in Mexico yet, but.
So I've been taking it. I just spent a month in Mexico, and I was taking it everywhere. And it was either you're gonna break it or you're insane. This is terrible.
Is the perception since it's in a can, it's got to be bad?
Yeah. And we put something in the can where it says like it's in a can, but don't be fooled. The wine is good, like something like that. We also do canned wine here in New York, and we do great with it, of course, because it's booming in the US, right? But here in the US, we went ahead and we're doing more back to basic things, and we're doing this amphora program. So we bought a few amphoras, and we're experimenting with skin contact, carbonic maceration. We've done everything from skin contact, carbonic macerations. Of course.
Can you hold 1 second? Someone is like, my dogs are freaking out. Give me a sec. Okay. Back again. We just had a little, we're having some work done in our house, so I had to go help the guy. So you were talking about the amphoras.
Yeah, so the amphora program, we are firm believers, and I was telling you that the wine is made in the grapes. So our philosophy is minimal intervention when it comes to winemaking. So I guess the Amphor program is us pushing that boundary a lot more. So they're all there. We don't add any yeast. They're all native yeast.
Oh.
And then we don't do any filtration to them. We do less racking. A lot of them are skin contact, or it depends what we're doing, carbonic maceration. I have to say we've done maybe 6 and we had to throw out like 2. So we go seriously into R&D, and we do lose some money and juice in it, but we're really pushing the boundaries and learning what we can and can't do best, right?
Sure. Now,
and
with
with
skin
grapes,
contact,
you because it's easy to say like I want to do a Riesling, but can the region do a great Riesling?
yeah. And I would think in New York it would, but that's more Finger Lakes, or.
I think we do a great Riesling. It's very hard to sell it because everyone keeps referring to. No, I'll get one from the Finger Lakes. So
there's the kitty.
Yeah, there's 2 of them.
My dogs they're off running around right now. So, what's your cat's name?
This is Milanesa, and there's a Batman somewhere.
Oh, nice. Good looking cat. So on the Amphoras, like you were saying, you're kind of pushing the boundaries. What can go wrong, like with skin contact? Like what's some of the things that your test proved? Well, we shouldn't do that again.
I think because we're pushing the limits on minimal intervention and you have the skins for a little longer, you risk the BA. And, I have so much trouble with all of this natural wine situation because as a producer, you're like, what does that even mean? Right? Like, tell me if you're doing a native fermentation, tell me what you are and aren't doing. But saying natural wine means nothing to me.
Yeah.
And then a lot of people are like, oh, it has that funkiness. Well, does it have that funkiness, or does it have a mistake? And is the VA just way out of control?
Yeah, getting people to believe, it should be funky. That's the way it's supposed to drink. No, it can still be clean.
It should be clean. And it should taste well. And if it's funky, it's because it's funky on maybe a little I don't know, mushroomy or but not on the acidity, not on the bolaric acidity, or not on the things that matter to make a wine clean and correct. So I guess we push those boundaries, and sometimes we don't make it right.
Yeah. So you're doing both native yeasts in New York and in Mexico.
Yeah, actually in Mexico, I want to say 85% of our production is now native yeast.
Oh wow! Now, do you use? Are you harvesting's not right, but you're cultivating the native yeast, or is it whatever's on the grapes? What happens?
In Mexico, it's whatever we have on the grapes and on the facility happens. Here in New York, we actually did do like 2 Kickstarters for 2 of the wines, and the other 3 were left alone. So I think we kickstart when we need here. But in Mexico, it's in Mexico, it's also not very valued like it is in the US, the fact that you don't add yeast. So we didn't tell anyone. We were just trying to be better and make better wines. And we started slowly, and suddenly it's like, oh, we're at an 85%.
Oh, wow. Now, how would you characterize the differences between the yeasts in Long Island versus in Mexico in your
in the space?
Like kind of the yeast, the native yeast all kind of part their own kind of nuances, whether it be floral or whatever. Do you see a difference between the 2 in the wines, or is it all with the terroir?
I think it is a difference, and also I think it's in the grape, but it's also what you've used before because it stays in the winery, right? Definitely, I think in New York. And I don't know if it's the yeast or the expression of the grape with the yeast, but it feels a little more yeasty, a little more like bread, like beer.
And that'd be good for this. Those sparkling would pick up that nice kind of toasty bread nuance.
We have I'm drinking so much of that now. I'll send you some. We have a sparkling Riesling on the lease.
Oh,
that just keeps that texture and that like nutty texture, but it's super fresh and high acidity on the mouth. It's just,
Oh, that sounds phenomenal.
yeah. And that's our answer to the Riesling, because the still Riesling, everyone's like, no, Finger Lakes. I'm like, okay, I'll do something different with this Riesling.
I'm gonna do a sparkling Riesling. I
Yeah.
love it. Oh, that sounds fantastic. So, I mean, this question I try to ask people, I kind of see how clearly you stay motivated, but how do you stay motivated? 10 years in, you just launched the other winery, you're constantly innovative, but where do you find all this like passion and desire to keep going?
Honestly, to me, I keep going back to where it all started, and it's what really kind of drives me back again. So I go to Parras, to the same place where we started, and Agustin has been with us for 30 years. He handles the production, and we have 200 people there that work the land with us. We also have pecans, so it's vineyards and pecans.
Oh,
but it's, I don't know, the serenity of being there and these people doing, working the land day in, day out. We have 3 generations there.
oh, wow.
And I ask them and I push them, and some of them go to college and they don't want to work with us anymore, which is great because it's the daughter and the granddaughter. But others are like, why? Why would I leave this beautiful place?
Uh-huh.
And that just kills me every time. I'm like, they really, I feel like they understood life a lot more than we do.
Yeah. No, that's
right?
beautiful. You mentioned pecans. Now I got to ask, have you tried doing anything with pecan liqueur or bitters?
Don't tell my father anything.
Okay.
Every year he's like, let's do a pecan liquor. I'm like, sure, we'll get to it. They do it in Parras.
Uh-huh.
It's common. I feel like it's not very marketable. It's very heavy. We would need to find an in-between.
Okay.
But we do chocolate covered pecans and salsa verde pecans, and we're doing all sorts of pecans.
Oh, that sounds good. No, I think a pecan bitter would be good. Like in the old.
Actually, we did a bitter and it was amazing. But I don't know, it would need a very specific market to sell it to, no?
Yeah, the whiskey market.
Yeah. We did all kinds of bitters. We had a restaurant at some point.
Oh, you did do that. Okay. Yeah, I can see that being a natural progression there.
That was a nightmare.
Was it?
It was beautiful, but it was a nightmare. I would never do it again. But I would do the product that we did for the restaurant.
Oh, that's fun. So let's see. What's next?
Great question. I think New York is still on those early stages, especially because of COVID.
Mm-hmm.
I think where we wanted to be this year, I think it's going to take me maybe another year or 2 years. Especially wholesale, right? It just killed us because we launched.
You launched right into COVID.
We actually launched wholesale February 2019.
Oh.
By March, our distributor was calling and saying, no one wants to buy a new brand. What do I do? And I was like, make them.
Uh-huh.
It was not easy. But what's next? I don't know. Hopefully one more vineyard, another underdog region in Europe.
Oh, that would be fun. Oh, world next step, world domination.
No, but no one. I feel like 3 is a great number if we do Europe. Like that would really round it up, and no one is really doing that. And I think there's a lot. You do
the Southern Hemisphere where you can keep your production going around year round.
Yeah, that's what one of my brothers says that, but I really want to live in Europe. So
okay, yeah, maybe the 4th one.
It's just the Southern Hemisphere is I don't know. I wouldn't know which is an underdog region that I would want to take. Maybe Uruguay.
Oh yeah, no, I don't think I've had a Uruguayan wine.
You haven't? Oh, they do Tanat.
Oh,
like nobody's business.
Really?
Oh yeah.
That's one of my favorite varietals. The
best ones are there.
I'm going to search one out.
They're doing nice Albariños as well.
Okay. Oh, nice. Gosh,
so yeah, it could be.
I'm going to look into that and I keep an eye out for it. So Maria, as we're kind of wrapping down here, where can people find out more about you and RGNY Winery and RGMX?
I guess our Instagrams are always, I like to think that they're up to date. rgmx.mx and RGNY Wine. Websites are the exact same. We're very good in trying to communicate with people through them. And we are actually great on the hospitality, as you said. So if people are ever out in New York or Mexico, definitely our events are one of our strong suits.
Yeah, looking through your site, some of those look like some fantastic events.
I told you we're doing a Dia de Muerto, late October, Dia de Muertos. So we're setting up the ofrenda, the altar properly. We're teaching people what an altar means. Why do we do this for the dead? We're having House of Yes from New York do a show, and we're having Mexican food. So it's a big party.
Gosh, that sounds fantastic. I wish I didn't live on the West Coast. That sounds fantastic. Well, Maria, thank you so much for joining us today.
No, thank you for having us. And I'll send you some wines, and I'm dying to hear your...
Absolutely. We've got to have a tasting. We have to do a supplementary tasting series on this.
Oh, good. Great.
No, that's what we like to do that. Well, thank you so much.
Thank you, Drew. Have a great day.
You too.
Thanks for listening to the Legends Behind the Craft podcast. We'll see you again next time, and be sure to click subscribe to get future episodes.